Well, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're joining us from. Over the next 60 minutes, we're going to share with you proven strategies and ideas that can make you rich. Now, these ideas will allow you to become more confident. They'll allow you to become more influential, and you'll be able to become a lot more persuasive. Now, the result that you'll be able to achieve is you'll be able to make more money in less time. Now, these ideas, people pay Bram and I tens of thousands of dollars to learn these every single year. And for today, for you, they're free. Now, just for being here and participating in this training, you'll have the chance to win a business stimulus package valued at more than $4,919. You'll also have the opportunity to win personal coaching and consulting with myself and Bram Lagrou. Now, along with this today, we're going to give away a ticket valued at $699 to the National Sales Conference coming up in the months ahead. And all you need to do is to participate. So thank you for joining us on today's training. Bram, good evening to you.
Good evening indeed to you and everybody that is joining in right now. I'd like to quickly introduce Daniel as well. Our coach today is a former Australian champion athlete. He's led a team of more than 17,000 cabin crew and personally conducted more than 1,000 studies into emotional intelligence. Today, he's going to show you how we can make more money in less time and prevent making costly errors by increasing your levels of emotional intelligence. So please help me to welcome Daniel Tolson.
Thanks, Bram. Thanks for having me there. And for those of you who are also joining us now, our other guest speaker today is a Belgium-born psychologist. He has led sales and customer service teams across 15 countries and personally trained more than 34,007 people in 2017 alone. Now, today he's going to share with us how we can use DISC to read people and communicate with them in the appropriate ways. So please help me welcome my good friend, Bram Lagrou. So, Bram, good to see you. Now, as we promised, we've got a tight schedule tonight. Let's just get straight into these strategies. I know that any one of these strategies that we're going to share with our friends tonight can change their lives. It can cause them to make more money in a lot less time. So, over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And just for everybody knowing, if you haven't read the exact structure, we will pretty much make 1 point and then flip it around again, and both of us will make 3 points over the course of this. We'll obviously also welcome questions after so that we can touch on those for you and clarify things. First things first, my first point is there's a fact that most people are only effective 25 to 50% of the time whenever they're in a communication environment with other humans. Now, just imagine what that means. If you and I are only effective 25 to 50% of the time, it means that we're leaving valid opportunities on the table, that we're leaving money on the table 50 to 75% of the time. Now, I've done this now over the last 9 years, and I can guarantee, say with hundreds of people that I've done this work with, that it is the case. So that is really the first fact that I wanted to share with you. I'd like to quickly share with you how I got to this realization. About 2 to 3 years into my business, this is a little story here, all right? So bear with me. 2 to 3 years into my business, I realized that I spent a lot of time in terms of business development with lots of people. And in a way, you could say that it was two big groups. One group over here, I did a lot of business with effectively. It came easily, it came naturally. They were repeat customers. They paid me well. Was pretty much fluent and the likes. Whilst on this other side here, there was people that also had a need that I could address, a budget that they were willing to invest. But for some reason, even though I spent a lot of valuable time with them, I couldn't get them across, let's say, for a decision. And I always thought, oh, they're just sitting on the fence. Now, again, two different groups. I figured then suddenly I got my epiphany moment. And suddenly I actually started seeing that the group over here that I was doing business with was very similar to me. They spoke the same way, thought the same way, had a similar speed, so similar sort of characteristics. So in a way, you could say that those people were like me. All right? And we say sometimes birds of the same feather flock together. On the other hand here, were people that were very differently wired. They were slower paced than me. Sometimes they were more technical or analytical and the likes. And I just was not getting ahead with them. That's when I somehow realized that I had cloned myself in my database or in my client group, whilst these people were just waiting for me to speak their language and appreciate where they were coming from. And until I somehow did that, I was just kept spinning my tires. Long story short, that year, I decided to actually go out and find out how they think, how they talk, how they want to be communicated and related to. And I gave it to them. Within 3 months, I picked up more business of these people than I previously ever had achieved. And that same year, I doubled my business without even needing to work harder. I was just working smarter. And so this is exactly what you can do as well. So the point of the story is we need to find ways, proven ways, to learn how to relate to people in a way that they want to be related to. And as soon as you do that, your effectiveness goes from 25 to 50% of the time to about 75 to even 85 or 90 if you really get good at it. That's my first point here.
Beautiful. Thanks, Bram. Very, very insightful. Now, you're all business people. You either own your own business or you're working for somebody else, and that makes you a business person. And I want you to begin to imagine this. Only 36% of business people can identify their current emotional state. Now, the truth is 80% of businesses fail in the first 2 years. And what happens is this induces fear into the business person. It induces fear into the employees who have taken the risk to follow the employer. Now, according to Inc. magazine and the latest research, it shows that 43% of business people, those people in business, fear loss on a daily basis. So right now, they can't even identify that they are experiencing this fear. These same people are fearing loss, and they fear loss right now. They also fear the unknown right now. And 99% of people in business have a simultaneous fear of rejection and criticism. Yet only 36% of people can identify with this. This is a fatal error, and it's costing business people like you millions of dollars every year. So today, we're going to find a solution to this problem, and it's a big problem. So let me start off with a great story, and it really illustrates this point about people not being able to identify their current emotional state. A local business owner, he could not identify his current emotional state, and he started to interview new employees for his business. Now, as he started to interview people, he started to interview his friends, and he got excited because they were friends. And what happened is in that excitement, he failed to check on their past behaviors in business. He failed to ask good questions, and he really failed to check references because he'd got excited, but he didn't realize that this excitement was taking over him. Now, because he was happy, because he was excited, and because he trusted his friends, he made some major errors. Within 12 months, he'd spent $100,000 on salary and received no result. The following 24 months, he paid an additional $100,000. Now he's spent $200,000 employing his friend with no return on his equity. And on the 36th month, he had spent $300,000 and he was almost broke. Now, for 36 months, this person could not identify his emotional state and he kept repeating the same mistakes. Now, this is what you can learn. You are 100% emotional. You make decisions emotionally, just like everybody else, and you justify them logically, like everybody else. Now, if you're one of these people, one of those 36% of business people who cannot identify with their emotional state, then this year you'll risk losing hundreds of thousands of dollars and you won't even know it. So this is my recommendation. Resolve to improve your levels of emotional intelligence today.
Very good one. I like it. Continue on from my previous point here. The one that I now wanted to share with you is the following. So we all know that people make a snap judgment of you and me in business. So we say first impressions, they're lasting. First impressions are also built like that. And so if you just imagine for a while, how long does it really take for somebody to get a first impression? The answer is, depending on face-to-face or over the phone, 3 to 7 seconds. Now, I'm not sure if you have ever counted this, but that's already done, or that's very much 7 seconds. That's at the very generous side of things, whilst the first one was a very short, quick one. On the phone, it generally is less time. Over in face-to-face, you got probably a bit more generosity in terms of time. The challenge is that in business, if you are facing a new opportunity, whether it's a business investor that you could work with or a client that may want to buy, the challenge is that your first 7 seconds define where it will go, whether it will continue on and you got a genuine opportunity, or whether the opportunity that was created with a lot of time, effort, and money somehow evaporates because you failed to create the right impression. First impressions are long lasting. So the challenge is, again, most people don't even think about it and they wing it in the precious 3 to 7 seconds. Time where you don't have the time to spin your wheels. Time when you can actually be prepared. And so let me tell you a quick story here. At one day, I wanted to cold call a very busy, highly influential person with a big corporation behind him that would benefit potentially from my services. Now, as you can imagine, very successful people with big pockets, they are very well guarded. And so when I cold called them, I knew that there was a lot of few steps to get through. But I finally, through my research and the sort of things that I do what I preach, I managed to actually get on the phone with this guy called Peter. And Peter was the managing director of one of the biggest commercial real estate firms in the state. And Peter, this is pretty much how it went. I went on the phone and I said, "Hello, Peter, my name is Bram, and I wanted to say something else." And he cut me off and he said, "You got 10 seconds to sell yourself." And I said, "Okay." I found ways, proven ways, to increase sales by 35% within 3 months. And I zipped it up. And he said, "Okay, next Wednesday, 10 a.m. in my office, be there." And he hung up. Now just imagine, this is really very hardball-like, very, very specific. This is a high D-type personality, as I call it, a director. And if I wouldn't be ready for it, is it fair to say that we might, let's say, get thrown off a little bit and start stumbling and umming? I wasn't, because I knew exactly before I went on the call what to expect. My point of this story here is 6 P's. Proper prior planning prevents poor performance. If you know that you've got a valid or a great opportunity where your first impression defines the success of all the efforts and all the money spent in the lead up to it, you better get ready. It's just part of being a professional. The question is more so, how do you do it? So this is pretty much what I want to share with you. It's about reading people first before you jump on the call. And there's 5 ways where you can do it pretty easily in 5 minutes. You can use, let's say, people's LinkedIn profile, because that LinkedIn profile, they write, and so their communication style and their thinking is translated in words that you can then hold against the template to know what sort of style these people have. The second one is you can also go onto interviews or videos where you see these people in action and just observe them. Third, you can also be in a networking function and just observe the body language. The body language emits how these people like engaging with others and how they want to be communicated to as well. Last but not least, if you have an opportunity to listen to their voice on a voice message, that is also one that gives a lot of cues away on how to prepare for the conversation, the meeting, and the likes ahead. So this is just a few ideas. Again, my point is it's important that you prepare so that you sharpen up and increase the likelihood of striking a first favorable impression. Over to you, Dan.
Well, these are great ideas, Bram. And the biggest thing is we deal with people all day. And we've got to make sure that we're in a position to be able to communicate effectively with these people. So what you did promise, Bram, you did promise me, and it's on there on Facebook, that you're going to do a giveaway, that you're going to give away a general admission ticket valued at $699 to this year's National Sales Conference. So what does our audience need to do right now to be able to win one of these tickets to the National Sales Conference?
Good reminder. Thank you very much. Yes, for people that are keen to come and network and learn for 2 days as my guest, let's say throughout your catering and everything is included, and the learning. All you need to do is to type some good questions here on what we already so far and what we're covered, and we'll pick a lucky winner very soon in this webinar.
It's a phenomenal event. It's the National Sales Conference. It's going to be held in Adelaide. Last year, I spoke there. Wonderful speakers like Dr. John D. Martini and Bram Lagrou. And oftentimes, you're only one new idea away from doubling or tripling your sales. And I'll mention it in a few moments about education. And it is impossible to be overly educated. It's absolutely impossible. But if you just pick up one new idea at the right time, it's enough to cause you to double your sales and income. So start to interact here, start to ask some questions about today's topics, and even pose your own business questions, and we'll come back to you with some very good advice. Now, there's a couple of things that you need to know, and I've researched success for years, and I have not been able to find a story where somebody's lost a job for being too motivated. I read thousands of cases every single month where people lose jobs because they have a lack of motivation. So do you know this? The majority of people give up on their goals before the very first attempt. And what that tells you is that these people have a lack of motivation. It's a fact and it's a sad truth. Now, in emotional intelligence, we say that emotional intelligence and motivation is your ability to pursue your goals with energy and persistence. It's also your ability to recover after a loss, after losing business, after losing a presentation. And it's also your ability to keep taking action after daily, weekly, monthly, and even yearly rejection. And this is what motivation really is. And without motivation, what happens is you start to lose hope and you start to become buried beneath all of those fears that I mentioned about just a few moments ago. Now, I love this story and I know that you'll be able to take something away from it. A client of mine, he was down and he was out. And just a few years ago, he was sleeping in the back of his car. Now, let me tell you this guy's ugly. This guy's bloody ugly. And he's uglier than the men, and he's surely uglier than the ladies. And the other thing for the men, I bet he's got less hair than you. And there's men complaining that they can't be successful because they don't have enough hair. Now, this guy, dare I say it, was probably dumber than everybody on this webinar. He didn't have a lot going for him. His product was old. and his presentation method was less than average. But what this guy did have was motivation. And he would get up every single day and he would overcome rejection. And he'd keep swinging and he kept missing. And eventually he started to hit home runs. Now, within 4 years of him starting out on his venture, he's become a self-made millionaire. So here's my point. Brains will get you from A to B, ladies and gentlemen, but your motivation will take you all the way to the very top. Something to think about as you pursue your goals. Now, how's your level of motivation? Do you feel as motivated as you should be? Could you be more motivated? Begin to post some questions here about motivation. Ask us about motivation and let us help you become a very highly motivated person. And as a result, you might even win a chance to get a ticket to the National Sales Conference. But before then, you'll start to make yourself a lot of money. So, Bram, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Let's have a quick look here at point number 3, the third thing that I wanted to share. It's obviously a nugget in a short space of time, but here's another fact. It costs precious time and money to create business opportunities. So, you know, I'd like you to actually answer a question for yourself in silence. Would you ever burn a stack of $100 notes just for the sake of it? Yeah? Of course, it's a rhetorical question. I'm asking it, and you might say, oh, that's pretty much stupid, but it still happens every single day that people are doing exactly that by just burning through opportunities, right? Because we keep treating people the way that we personally want to be treated. And in a way, you align yourself then with Frank Sinatra, who did it his way, right? Frank is already long time gone, and it's a very old school way of doing it your way. Science and research is unequivocal about it. It's about us learning how to treat people the way that they want to be treated. And so the sooner you get that one, and the sooner you adjust your approach, the more it will help you to save a lot of time and a lot of money. Let me tell you a quick story as well here. Many years ago, I worked with a property developer, a guy that at the time when I found him had built a $56 million business in 6 years. $56 million revenue, highly profitable business in 6 years' time. They engaged me to work with the sales team. And obviously properties, you know, there's lots of people that operate in real estate and property development in Australia and even elsewhere in the world. One of the guys that I worked with there is called Nick. And Nick is a very flamboyant, eager, wanting to please people, sees the good in everybody, be positive and upbeat and optimistic, and always sees, you know, can do rather than the opposite, right? So Nick is in a way the great salesman. He's got great sales potential. Definitely when I found him, he used to sell bikes before, and then suddenly he started to sell homes off the plan. Now, to give you some perspective on this, the average real estate salesperson in Australia sells about 16 to 18 homes a year, whether that's units or houses, 16 to 18. After a year of training and coaching Nick was able to close 140 properties in his first year. Now, just look at that. That's a factor 8 times what the average sales woman or man in Australia does in a similar industry. The only thing that Nick really learned is how to really hone it home is to read people's style, pick up on every clue, prepare for it well, then give them exactly what they wanted in an authentic, genuine, and way with integrity. And people were then more comfortable to buy because, as Daniel already said earlier, we're 100% emotional. So logical things like pricing and, you know, how many rooms it is and, you know, what the terms are and all of this sort of stuff don't even come into the picture until people feel certain ways. And Nick has become a master in doing that. Since then, Nick has gone on to to do even more. And right now, he's actually started his business about 2 months ago and is already doing a lot. Picked up about 70 listings in the first 2 months. Go figure. Nick is on a success path, and so are other people in the same business that I trained as well for a year or so. My point of the moral of the story here is, the sooner you get this thing, the sooner you learn how to speak in other people's style, and the more you will be on the same wavelength, the more they will tune in, the more comfortable they will feel, and the more easily people will want to do business with you, especially if they are different to you. Over to you, Dan.
100% great advice there. So what we'll start to do now, if you, ladies and gentlemen, start to post your questions up inside the chat box there, and Bram and I will start to answer these as we go through. So Bram, if you'd do me a favor and you'd start to check that text box. Now remember, we're going to give away a $699 ticket to this year's National Sales Conference. The return on investment of that ticket could be you doubling your sales, and it could be tripling your income. So make sure you ask some good questions here, because we want to give this away so that you can become a big success. Now, in my years, Bram, I've seen some pretty wild things. And I want to be able to share some of these things with people, our friends here today. Now, here's a fact, is that 85% of your success is attributed to your social skills. But what are your social skills? Your social skills are your ability to get along with other people. It's your ability to persuade people. And it's also your ability to lead people, because you are a leader in the life of many people, especially your internal and your external customers. Now, in a recent survey, it showed that 95% of women and men were let go from their jobs over a 10-year period, not because they had a lack of competence or a lack of skill, but it was because of poor social skills. It was their inability to get along with people. They lost their jobs because they had an inability to persuade people. They also lost their jobs because they couldn't lead people. And these things we have to keep in mind. So there's something that you can learn from one of my clients here in the UK. A very good friend of mine, I was in Dubai with him just last week. His name's James Lavelle. He's a self-made millionaire, but he was born into poverty. He lived in council houses, moving from house to house, oftentimes just sleeping on the floor. He had no advantages. His mother had no money. His father died when he was a very young boy. And his first job was in a bacon factory, as he called it. And what he was doing was he had to slaughter pigs. Blood and guts everywhere. And he's doing that as a 15-year-old boy as his very first job, just to put money in his pocket. Now, how is it possible for this guy in under 10 years to go from $0 to driving a Porsche, from $0 to living in a mansion, from $0 to traveling around the world, living a very luxurious lifestyle? And how is it possible that he can do it in under 10 years, where the majority of the population can't even achieve that at the end of their working life, after working 40, 50, and even 60 years? Well, the secret to this is in James's advice. And it was some advice that he shared with me not long ago. And I want you to remember, and I want you to write it down. James says this. He says, my 100%, meaning his effort, is not as powerful as 1,000 people's 1% effort. And this is what James knows. James knows that you can only ever give 100%. You can't give 110%. You can't give 120%. You can't even give 130%. You can only ever give 100%. However, if you can communicate effectively and move people emotionally, then you become a multiplication sign. Now, James has learned to communicate, and he's learned to get excellent performance from very average people, just average people like you and I. And now he has more than 1,000 people in his organization, and 1,000 people are giving 1% every single day. That is 900% more than he can ever do by himself. And that's he cannot give that on his own. Now, on this strategy alone, ladies and gentlemen, if you begin to think like he does, if you begin to think like a self-made millionaire, and you make that choice like he did to be able to become excellent at your social skills, you'll be able to be in a position where you never have to work again. And in his late 30s, he also now has that choice where he never has to work again. Fascinating. So here's the point. This is what I want you to take away, ladies and gentlemen. Your ability to interact positively and effectively is worth more to you than any other skill. It's your social skills that pay the bills. And this is what you need to learn. Now, Bram, he's counting his fingers, he's counting his dollars, and he wants to give away this prize. He wants to reward somebody, and I want to reward somebody. I'm going to give away 3 one-to-one sessions with me. Now, in these one-to-one sessions that I deliver with my clients is that we discover the critical constraints. And you may or you may not know what a critical constraint is. A critical constraint is a bottleneck. It's a choke point in your business. It's a blocker on the way for you to achieve your goals. Now, in every single business and every single goal, there is a bottleneck, something that slows you right down, something that gets in your way. And as I mentioned before, the majority of people give up on their goals before their very first attempt. So I'm going to spend time with 3 people. Corporates pay me more than $2,500 for each of these sessions. And today it's going to be absolutely free for you. And I'm going to show you how to identify 3 very critical things. In the 60 minutes that we spend together, you're going to discover the source of 80% of your constraints. You're going to discover the source of 80% of the things that are holding you back from making the type of sales that you want, from making the type of money that you want, and also from having the type of holidays and time off you desire. Secondly, I'm going to help you identify the critical constraints limiting your progress as an individual, which is very, very important. And thirdly, I'm going to help you develop plans to overcome your critical constraints. Now, here's what I've learned about self-awareness. Most people think just because they become aware of a problem, that solves the problem. And I see this in emotional intelligence all the time. They say, oh my gosh, I have a limiting belief. And they think by just identifying the limiting belief, it'll disappear. That's not the case, ladies and gentlemen. You've got to be able to develop plans to overcome these critical constraints. And if you don't have a plan, you're not serious. And that's why corporates bring me in. They pay me $2,500 to learn from me these exact strategies. And I'm going to give away 3 of these sessions tonight. And I hope it's you. I really do. I really do.
Good stuff. Just Daniel, to keep everybody updated. So we had so far a question from Karen coming in. Karen, sorry if I mispronounce this. Hagberg. Karen, I'm not sure where are you from exactly, but it would be good to see you confirming where exactly you live. So the question that Karen had is when the sales conference that we have a free ticket for, valued at $699. By the way, the sales conference is a completely paid event. It's not a free event where they say like, hey, valued at this, and then they get you in, they get everybody in for free. The sales conference is a legitimate 2-day personal and professional development conference. As Daniel Tolson already said, we had people like Dr. John DeMartini, which you've seen from The Secret, and Daniel Tolson himself, myself, and many other great experts in the field present there. We got now 7 speakers lined up for the one in May. So specifically going back to the question, the sales conference is held at the Adelaide Entertainment Centre in Theatre B, that is in South Australia, on the 7th and 8th of May. And that's obviously then the first question. I see now that Karen has also by now replied. You live in Torquay. Yes, the surf capital of Australia. Well done. Love it. So pretty easy for you to get here as well. Great place, again, to come And thank you again for that question. Let's just solicit a few more questions and then get into the goodies that we're going to hand out. I'd like to just see like what other things people have on their mind so that we can answer those and then pick some lucky winners. All right. So we keep an eye on the feed on Facebook. So any questions here, feel free for either Daniel or myself. Perhaps Daniel, do you perhaps want to quickly jump into some of the summaries just to again remind people of what you covered, and then I'll do the same?
Absolutely. Now, your biggest takeaways, and I want to summarize this in just about 60 seconds for you, is that to survive in this climate, in today's market, you must be aware of your emotions. And before you make any decision, you got to know it before you make any decision. What emotion am I feeling right now? And once you've figured it out, then make the decision. And remember that if you don't get it right, you could be one decision away from business failure. That's just how important it is, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to the emotions. Secondly, you do not need to be better looking than anybody else to win. You don't need to be any smarter than anybody else to win in business. What you need to do is you need to become more motivated, because it's impossible to beat a motivated person. It's impossible to beat a person who gets knocked down and just continually gets back up. It's very easy to beat those people who get knocked down and stay down. Now, I trained in boxing when I was younger, and that was the fact. If you knocked them down and you were more motivated to stay up, you won every single time. So that's motivation. And then thirdly, your social skills, your ability to interact with a wide variety of people is your greatest asset. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an asset. And if you're a business person, you're always on the lookout for this asset in people. So your role, ladies and gentlemen, is to develop it. Because who else is watching? Your customer is watching. And your customer rewards the person who has that greatest asset of social skills. So be sure to keep these on top of the mind. And Bram?
There you go. Some summary here from my end as well. So again, the Belgian here in me is straight away looking at 4 fingers, but it's actually 3. Summary of the 3 points that I wanted to share with you that I know that really helps people to work smarter, save time, be more effective, and obviously be more successful in whatever they choose to do are the following. Number 1 is, unless you treat people the way that they want to be treated, you'll automatically disenfranchise 5 to 7.5 people out of every 10, because that's most people are wired in that way. I've got the stats, I've measured it enough. These are the facts that speak. Next one, number 2 then, is knowing the real value of first impressions and how quickly they form. You know, people just make them like in a blink of an eye. We'd better do our homework before we go into a meeting or jump onto a call. I remember how PwC, for example, got me across to Victoria to train 28 of their top performers on how to prepare in 5 minutes for meetings and therefore amplify the success rate through the first impressions. Right? You can do the same. 5 to 10 minutes is all it takes. You just need to have some tools. Some of the tools we will also be discussing at the sales conference. And number 3, you've got a genuine opportunity to speak in people's language. Now, I'm a Belgian, so therefore I speak already a different language. Mm-hmm. But even in English, there is different languages. There's different layers, and we sometimes see through it. It doesn't have to be that way. You can be way more effective, therefore increasing the odds of communication effectively and therefore achieve your desired outcomes. That's my quick summary here. Before I hand it over back to Daniel, I just want to let you know, similar to Daniel, corporates that over the last 9 years have invited me in, they've paid up to $10,000 for 4 hours of my time, $10,000 to train their staff. And I'm going to give away some of the best tools that I've had in terms of working smarter and be more productive with the time we've got at hand. And it's called what I call my personal productivity mini course. I'm happy to give it to you. There are normally $197, so $197 online. I'm going to give it away to 10 people. All I need to know is people that say, yes, Bram, I'm up for it. And those first 10 people that will be in the feed, I'll actually take some time to talk to you, and I'll also give you my $197 online productivity course for free. So you get and the course and me to pick my brain over the phone call. So that's it. Over to you, Dan.
What a deal. Now, Karen Hagberg has a great question here. And the question is how do I become an excellent storyteller? Well, we can answer the question through emotional intelligence. So the first thing that you need to become an excellent storyteller is you have to have motivation. Because one of the biggest things with telling stories is you've got to overcome your own fears of rejection, and you've got to overcome your own fears of criticism. Because when you start to tell a story, people may pick it apart, and you've got to be prepared for that. So you've got to have that motivation to do it. Also, you need to have the motivation to want to increase your results. And that's one of the most first and important things. It all starts with desire. You have to have the desire, and we can substitute that for the word motivation. Secondly, Karen, the next thing, you've got to become very social aware. Now, telling a good story is very contextual. You have to look at the person that you're speaking to. You have to be able to look at the group of people that you're speaking to and tell a story that is relevant for them. Now, in anecdotal selling, which you'll learn about at the National Sales Conference, is that we must tell stories to women that are based around women. See, it's very, very hard for a woman to imagine she's a man. Some people can do it. It's very hard for men to imagine that they're a woman. There's a lot of men out there today who can do that. But I promise you, when you're telling a sales story, it has to be contextual. So you've got to make sure that you tell a female-based story for a female and a male-based story for a male. Now, when you are looking at that person, you have to be able to read what's important to that person. What drives this person? And we all have to get our heads around the fact that everybody's motivated by money. Everybody's motivated by time. Some people say, Daniel, money doesn't motivate me. Excellent. Excellent. Good. Give me your credit card. Give me your bank account details. And their mouth shuts straight away. Money is the lowest common denominator, ladies and gentlemen. That's why people work. If you can't solve your financial problems, you can't have anything in life. You can't even have peace of mind on this planet if you have no money. It's absolutely impossible. You have to eat. You have to feed your families. You've got to put food in their bellies. So you've got to be able to look across at the audience in that context and discover what's important for them right now. If it's health and fitness, it's health and fitness. If it's money, it's money. If it's increasing their sales, only tell stories about increasing sales. And then the third part is social regulation. And social awareness and social regulation come down to your social skills. Your social regulation is your ability to press those hot buttons. First of all, you've got to read those hot buttons, but then you've got to have the courage to press those hot buttons. And a lot of people in sales today, they fear rejection and they fear criticism, which is 99% of people. Now, 50% of all sales presentations end without the salesperson asking for the order. Now, the reason why they don't ask for the order is because they have a fear of rejection and they have a fear of criticism and they haven't communicated their offer correctly. So first, you've got to have motivation, Karen. Secondly, you've got to be able to read that person. You've got to be able to have excellent social awareness. And then you have to be able to communicate and tell them a story that moves them emotionally. Remember, as I said before, people are 100% emotional. They make decisions in the right hemisphere of their brain. And if it moves them emotionally, they will find any way to justify it logically. How do I know? Because there's been times in my life where I haven't communicated emotionally. And the people say, Daniel, I can't afford that. And then the very next day, they got a $5,000 Louis Vuitton handbag and they put a photo of it on social media. And what happened? I failed to communicate emotionally because what did they do? They justified that purchase of their Louis Vuitton logically. And it's just a fact. Motivation, social awareness, and social regulation. And that's a bloody good question. And more people should ask good questions like that. So well done, Karen. Great question.
Good stuff. If I could just interject for a moment, Sam Dorman, our real estate friend from Ray White, is asking a very interesting question. So I'll just quickly read it out and then I'll answer it. Signs to pick up at job interviews on possible recruitment opportunities that I'm about to look at. the words they use and what questions should I ask to see if they have the motivation to move to my business and step up their game, or are they just moving with their own bad trade baggage? Very good question. Look, I'm going to have an attempt, Sam. Obviously, I know that we've already done quite a bit of work together, and you have already been a few times at the sales conference as well, coming back as well. First thing, in job interviews, definitely, the way that people are wired, the style of communication that comes natural to them is typically what they're going to display in the job interview. However, it's important to know that there is a difference between natural styles and adapted. And so in a work environment or in a job interview environment, people will try to please you by giving you what they think they should, obviously within the means that they have in terms of communication. So let's just say that they think that you're expecting an outgoing person that looks really super excited about coming to work with you. They might display that, and you might misread that as them being high in terms of an influencer. So it sometimes can be a bit tricky. I would suggest you to look into the rule of 3, which is interview people on 3 different occasions in 3 different settings by 3 different people on your team. So once, for example, your PA, once your wife, or whoever it might be that person will be working closely with, the property manager perhaps, and then really try to sift it through in different contexts. So one time you would be in an office, the other one would be in a lounge room, the other one in a cafe or something. What you're trying to gauge is to see how their communication evolves in 3 different environments with 3 different people at 3 different times. The rule of 3 is very helpful in that regard. And you obviously keep looking at going back to the manual of communication mastery that you did with me to really look for the words they're using, the phrases and the likes, and look for the most consistency across the board. That will probably give you a really good idea of the right style that they've got. And in terms of the motivation, there's just good questions, like, why would you want to come and work with me and not somebody else? And really, it's more like what they say to that question that will give you an indication. I think that's pretty much it for me. I want to be short, sharp, and snippy. Thanks for that question.
Sam, it's a good question, and I'm just going to stack on top of what Bram said here. So first of all, what you got to know is that with today's science and technology, Sam, is you can reduce your hiring mistakes by up to 97% by following the advice that I'm about to give you. Now, what we also know, and these studies hold true for every single business owner in the world, Sam, is that a hiring mistake will cost you to 3 to 5 times that person's annual salary. So if you're looking at hiring a person who's just going to generate leads in your business and you pay them $40,000 and you screw up the hire, then that hiring mistake will cost you $120,000 in the first year, all the way up to $200,000 in the first year. Now, I've helped real estate agents across the country hire dozens of people in the last 6 months, and we've avoided all those costly areas. And this is how you do it, Sam. So get your pen and paper there. First of all, you have to benchmark the position. You have to identify what success looks like for this particular role, because you're hiring the person that you hire as a sales creator or a lead generator will not succeed as a salesperson. How do I know? Because I've been in that position, both positions myself. We just hired away a very high performer in a network that you're familiar with, and he earns in excess of $600,000 a year GCI. And we now have a template for what that looks like. So you've got to discover, Sam, if it's for a salesperson, you need somebody who is very driven, who is very competitive. That's the first thing. The second thing, they've got to be very influential and they've got to be very persuasive with people. Next, they have to be very eager. The person that you want in sales is not looking for stability. People who want stability never succeed in real estate. These people have got to be eager. But you also need people who are compliant in today's market, because if they go out there and they start over-quoting, you're going to find yourself at what we call it NCAT in Sydney, we call it QCAT in Queensland, we call it VCAT in Victoria, and you probably call it SCAT in South Australia, SCAT, and you'll be scattered all over the place. That's the first thing. You've got to benchmark it. The second thing that you've got to do is you've got to start to look at emotional intelligence. Imagine having somebody of low emotional intelligence and going out and representing your brand. going out there and tarnishing your years of hard work, going out there saying, I represent Sam Doman, and they tarnish your good name. Like Bram said before, the business is lost in the first 4 to 7 seconds. And that comes down to their levels of emotional intelligence. We were looking at a gentleman in real estate recently. He had incredibly low emotional intelligence. And it was costing the company hundreds of thousands of dollars every single year because of his low emotional intelligence. Now, once you've done that, Sam, there's 4 things you've got to look at. You've got to look at their behaviors. That's critically important. Next, you've got to have a look at their motivators. You've got to have a look at what drives them. And there's 12 different motivators. You've also got to have a look at their acumen. You've got to measure how well does this person understand the world? Because somebody with a very poor worldview will never be a high performer. How well do they understand themselves? If somebody has a very low self-view, they'll never be a high performer. And then you loop back around to what I said before, is that a hiring mistake will cost you 3 to 5 times their annual salary. It doesn't come out of their pocket, it comes out of yours. It's a very big issue. And then finally, you've got to have a look at competencies. Can this person actually do what they're saying? And with the strategies and the tools that I use, Sam, we reduce the hiring risk for companies by 97%. And if you do those 3 things, mate, you will hire the best people. You'll hire the right people at the right time. And you won't be the 3rd best agent in the town. You won't be the 2nd best. You will be the best. And once you are the best, what happens is you create this culture that starts to attract all the other high performers. So if you need to speak later on, make sure you reach out to myself or Bram, and we'll show you exactly what to do. Absolutely.
Excellent stuff as well. And thanks also for jumping in, Daniel. Just letting you know that we are running, let's say, towards the end of the webinar. And we did promise people to, those that got engaged, to share out some goodies. So first things first, the signs are unequivocal to have one person to win the lucky $699 ticket to the National Sales Conference. The way I went about it, I put all the names of the people that were engaging in the Facebook feed onto a little card. I scribbled it. I put it all in there. I took 5 times the name, and 3 times it was the same person coming out of it, right? And this person is, without further ado, Sam Doman. You're not going to come with just 4 people. You are coming with 5 people to the sales conference. Well done. Your PA can happily join in. Well done again. It was the lucky draw again, unequivocal. Well done.
Well done. Well done.
All right. Now, we do, of course, have the other goodies to give away. Daniel, what about you? How are you going to go about that?
Well, we need some questions. Before I give it away, I need some good questions. I need some really good questions. And this is it. I want to give it away, but I want to see people who are actually motivated. And I like to work with motivated people. You might have seen me put a blog out yesterday when I was in Dubai, and it says, I hate mediocrity. So start to ask some good questions. I'm going to hang around here for a few extra minutes. I'm going to answer Karen's question. Now, Karen asked the question, what motivates you to do what you do? Well, Karen, that's a very good question. And I was telling a story the other day that when I grew up with a lot of learning disabilities. My first 11 years in life was just going to therapy. I was going to remedial therapy. I was getting my cranium massaged because my cranium used to push down on my brain, and it caused what's called linear sequential learning disability. I'd look at the board and I couldn't copy the words from the board into the book. My spine was misaligned and my neck was out, and I lived for my first 11 years in pain. I had migraine headaches, and all I did was ever catch up. By the time I got to school, I got bullied, I was laughed at, I was always kicked outside, the teachers gave me a hard time, and by 17, 18, I had chronic fatigue and Epstein-Barr virus. I got into real estate, and I was given a book by a gentleman by the name of Brian Tracy. And my uncle gave me the book, and he wrote in the front of the book, he said, Daniel, this is the blueprint of success. And it was all about emotional intelligence. And I read this stuff and I said, you know what? I think half my problem in my life is I think my problems are all in my head. And in this book, he says that 95% of your physical ailments in your body are psychosomatic in nature. And what psychosomatic means is psycho meaning the mind, making soma, the body, ill. Somatic is a pain. And what I'd realized was because of all these years of challenges, I'd made myself sick. And I went down the path of emotional intelligence, and I started to ask the question, why are some people more successful than others? And I wanted to figure out why other people could have success and I couldn't. So I got into real estate and I started to do what successful people did. And within 6 months, here's a guy who left school. I never finished school. I don't have a school certificate. I don't have a high school certificate. I dropped out of almost every single class. But in 6 months into real estate, I'm making more money than my headmaster. How's that possible? I'm making more money than my headmaster. By 19 and a half, I bought my first house. Within another year and a half, I bought my second house, and I'm in the top 10 real estate agents in the country. And it was phenomenal. And I thought, if I can do this, what else can I do? So I got on a mission of just unlocking more of my potential. And eventually I found that I was a very good coach and that I could help other people unlock more of their potential. And just in the past 4 years alone, my clients have increased their revenues by more than $100 million. And I found what I'm good at. And what we talk about in personal branding, which I'm going to talk about at National Sales Conference, is it's called the law of specialization. I've found out what I'm exceptionally good at. And whenever I work with a client, they make incredible amounts of money. Some people say, Daniel, your clients make so much money, it should be illegal. Well, I'm glad, and I wish it was illegal, but there's no cap on how much money you can make. There's no law that says you can only earn this amount of money. And that's what I do well. And that's why I got into this field, because it is my specialization. It's what I'm passionate about. It's what I love, and it's what I do best. And we're going to talk about specialization at the National Sales Conference. And once you start to apply the law of specialization into everything that you do, like we say, the cream rises to the top. You'll go straight to the top of your field. People will recognize you. They'll pay you double, triple, quadruple for what you do over and beyond anybody else. Don't believe me? I have a client in Melbourne who earns more than $15,000 a day as a personal trainer. $15,000. Imagine that. And everybody else is struggling to get $50. And there he is laughing all the way to the bank every single day. And he has a waiting list for people. And we're going to get you results like this at the National Sales Conference. It's going to blow your mind. And that's why I got into it. Why did you get into it, Bram? That's a good question. Why did you get into coaching?
Oh, look, I think it was Karen that asked that question, was it? Yeah, Karen. Thanks again, Karen, for being so involved here. Look, I like to make it simple. I love people. I love make a difference. I went into psychology and became a psychologist in Belgium just because those two reasons. I love people and I like making a difference. For that, then I somehow appreciated once I graduated that, just sitting with a goatee next to a couch with somebody lying on it and just telling me all their problems wasn't quite really right for me. So I really got really excited about the world of business, took on a sales rep role for an American-based company in Europe, and did pretty well, and gradually grew my region to 15 countries and worked with people in 15 countries and spent 200 nights in a hotel a year and had a great time, and we built a multi-million-dollar business around it. So suffice to say, I love sharing, I love teaching, I love coaching and the likes, and so that's pretty much what got me in there. Yeah, I'm still loving it today, 14 years after.
And Karen's got a follow-up question there, Bram. How do you define success?
How do you define success? Look, success for me is there's 6 areas of life. There's a mental life, there's your emotional life, there's your relationship life, there's your physical life, there's your career, your finances, and your spiritual life. All those 6, for me, I've got specific things that I measure and hold myself accountable for achieving. And to the extent that I get there, happiness is pretty much the, what was it again? The steady realization of a worthy goal. I have my goals in all those 6 areas. And as I'm, plowing away and getting closer to them, the more happy I am. The more I'm doing of what I love, the more happy I am and the more successful I am.
It's a great question, Karen. And it's one that I constantly ask myself. And I believe success, first of all, is a moving target. It's not a stationary thing. It's a moving target. And the older that we get, and really as our life starts to accelerate towards the end, the meaning changes very quickly. So how I measure success is through peace of mind. So if I go to sleep at night and I've got a smile on my face, if I wake up in the morning and I've got a smile on my face, then I know that I have peace of mind. And how I measure that peace of mind is to ensure that I have benchmarks for success in each area of my life, just like Bram mentioned. I don't need to be a 10 out of 10 in every single area of my life right now. Eventually I'll get there. But what I discovered when I was younger, I used to set standards for myself so high, Karen, that only failure was ever possible. So what I do now is I have a look at what I can achieve, what level of success I can achieve with what I have now. And I know that because of my schooling years, I was behind the eight ball. And I used to put a lot of pressure on myself, expecting that I'd have the same results as other business people, but they were further ahead in terms of knowledge and skill. So what I do now is I have a look, I take a benchmark where I am today. It's like measuring my height against the door as you're a kid. You've got to measure yourself. And then you've got to say, well, what's 10% above this? And just keep striving for another 10%. You can have an end goal that's 100% or 200% further, but just aim for 10% at a time. And why 10% is important is it ties into your neurology and your nervous system. See, once you move outside of your comfort zone by as little as 10%, you can go into self-sabotaging behaviors. And if your income increases by 10%, most people spend 100% of that increase immediately because they self-sabotage. So I always start to have a look at what's 10% outside of my comfort zone, and I achieve that and I succeed and I celebrate the success and I'm happy. And I keep achieving happiness on a daily basis, whether it be a financial goal or a non-financial goal. And your financial goals always, ladies and gentlemen, take longer than your non-financial goals. You have to increase your level of sales before you increase your levels of income. And just remember that, because most people put it the other way around. But before you increase your level of sales, you have to attend the National Sales Conference, because you'll have to learn how to sell more successfully. And that's what I'm going to talk to my 3 people about on my call. What stands between you and your goal? Because there's always a limiting factor. And if you don't discover what your limiting factor is, you'll fail straight away. Absolutely guaranteed. But if you identify the limiting factor, then you can create a strategic plan on how to overcome that. And that's a great question, Karen. And Karen, because you've asked good questions tonight, I'm going to give you away one of the $2,500 packages with me, and I'm going to work with you personally to help you identify the constraints that prevent you from getting what you want. So congratulations, and a wonderful question.
Excellent stuff indeed. We've got another question here from Ollie Burgess. Ollie, I'm not sure where you are, mate, but thanks for jumping in. I'm just going to read it out loud quickly so that everybody can listen in as well. I've got a question. With the sales strategies you teach out, how do you react to those who go on to sell to you? Do you adapt that which they teach out, or because of knowing what you know, have you tweaked your interpretation of what you teach out to adjust to how you do things? I've got a bit of I'll admit that I'm not 100% sure that I got the question, but the way I'm reading it, I'm going to have a quick attempt, Daniel, if you're all right with that.
Go for it.
I've had effectively people come to me and, similar to what you said, that wanted to sell me something. And first of all, I wasn't looking to be sold to. So I somehow found a way to turn it around. And long time before he knew, he was actually buying what I had instead. And it's interesting. He approached me and I ended up selling. So, look, I think there's always, in sales, basic principles always align. Is there a need for what a person has got to sell? If there is no need, there's no sale. It's very simple. But if you can uncover a need, and you're the first one to uncover a genuine need that the other person has before they find one of yours, your likelihood of making a sale is much higher. And that's pretty much sales fundamentals. I'm not sure if that helped you, Ollie, but please feel free to let me know, and we'd be very curious to see where you live. Again, a quick reminder also, ladies and gentlemen, there is 10 people that I'm going to personally give away my personal productivity course. People have paid me in the past $10,000 for half a day of these sort of things. I'm happy to share them with you in my online course for free. All I need to see in the feed is that you say, yes, Bram, I'm up for it. There's already a few people that did. Thank you for that. That means that you're already in for it. I'll also schedule a time with you to help you with a few things that you'd like to pick my brain on. So that's pretty much part of the package as a thank you for joining in today.
Well done. I might just tap onto Ollie's question here, and it's a good question, Ollie. One of the things for every business owner is you should respect the field of selling. and a lot of salespeople hate being sold to. And those people who hate being sold to are often the people who fail in sales. Look, you're always looking for some way to grow your business. And if somebody's got a product and service, hear them out. Because what you can become is you can become referral partners, you become business partners, and you might just find somebody that you can do business with long term. And I have people all around the world that I do business with. I remember doing a lot of sales there to direct sellers with the RX company with James Lavelle in England, and I went on to probably spending $400 or $500 a month on their products. And I also believe that it's good where you can to refer out to other people. I think that's absolutely essential. I think that's important. So hopefully that gives you some insight into that question. Was there anything else on that question there? Do you adopt what you teach out, or because knowing what you know, you have tweaked your interpretation of what you teach out to adjust how you do things? Well, Ollie, I think the next thing there, mate, is that sales is a moving target. And in today's selling, and especially when we're selling high ticket items and we're in a very high tech world, is that we have to have a very high touch approach. So what worked last year in selling might not work this year in selling. So it's a moving target, and we have to be able to constantly adapt, adjust, respond. So just remember that: adapt, adjust, and respond to the market, and always be flexible. The number one quality of success that's required in the future is the quality of flexibility. The quality of flexibility. You have to be more flexible than anyone else. Now, Charles Darwin said it's not the strongest of the species that will survive. It's the most adaptable to change. And that comes down to emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence, again, is the biggest predictor of success. If people aren't resilient, if people aren't adaptable, then they're not emotionally intelligent. And they'll be suffering a loss in emotional intelligence in one of 5 key areas. It'll either be self-awareness. They won't know their strengths. They won't know their weaknesses. They won't know what they do well. I led a team of 17,000 cabin crew, and every day I'd brief 17 new crew, and you'd say to them, "What's your special skill?" And they'd look at you like this, and they'd start to stare at the ceiling. And I'd ask them again, "What's your special skill?" And their eyes would open up, and they'd look at the ceiling, and I would look at the ceiling, thinking the answer was written on the ceiling. And then I'd pull their leg and I'd say, "Hey, just because you can't see me, it doesn't mean that I can't see you. So what's your special skill?" And the thing is, people with low self-awareness can't answer that question. But you'll find these answers at National Sales Conference this year. We'll help you become more emotionally intelligent. We'll show you how to position yourself and your personal brand in a way that gets noticed. So the people who are thinking about attending National Sales Conference this year, it's going to blow your mind. It just gets better and better every single year. Make sure you're there.
Exactly. Just want to say a quick shout out to Sam Doman again. Well done on winning that general admission ticket to the sales conference of $699. That means that your team will be there in full glory, 5 people in total, because you already had 4 tickets purchased earlier. Congratulations also to Karen Hagberg for winning that online course of mine, $197 online, along with a private conversation with me over the phone. Katerina Cameniti, I suppose that sounds like Italian. I'm not sure where you live, Katerina, but well done also. You're in the same thing for it. So you got also one of those courses coming your way, along with a call to me, with me. If you could just identify where you live, that would be helpful as we schedule, let's say, a time later on.
Katerina from Melbourne.
Melbourne?
Melbourne.
Okay, excellent. Okay.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's always a pleasure to see you here. We catch up with good people like you every month. I mean, we're going to be here again next month. And remember that success is really a moving target. And the most important thing for you to do is you've got to learn to sell to survive. And you've got to constantly update your sales strategies. You've got to constantly update your emotional intelligence, and you've got to constantly improve your social skills, because your social skills are the biggest predictors of success. So it's been a pleasure to be here with you tonight. I know it's been a great evening with excellent questions. And I know that Bram, although he's busy typing away on his phone, sending out those prizes, he's loved everything. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us, and we shall see you again soon. Wherever you're joining us from, good morning, good afternoon, and good night. Ciao for now.
Thank you very much. Have a good night. Bye-bye.